If there's a hell, I hope it ain't too hot. Hi, welcome back. I might sound like a broken record when I say that I'm not an expert over the topics that I'm going over, but I just want people to be aware that all I'm trying to do is provide perspective and advice to people who might be struggling over these certain topics. And also, I just want to share my ideas and beliefs so that way I can get further insight and feedback from you guys over the topics. Sleeping is awesome. I think everyone can agree that there is nothing better than a good night's sleep. You get to go home, lie in your bed, close your eyes and dream about whatever bullshit comes to your head and feel like you're living in a fantasy. Unfortunately, there are some people who struggle to fall asleep. What I mean by that is people are having a hard time getting the recommended amount of sleep they need. A survey taken in 2021 shows that roughly 26% of men and women in America don't get enough sleep. Whether it be physical or mental issues, they're not getting the recommended amount of sleep they need. The CDC says that an adult is recommended to get at least 7 hours of sleep. Meanwhile, these people who are struggling to sleep are barely even getting 5 hours. An interesting survey I found was one that covered the people between the ages of 18 and 29. Roughly 42% of the people in this age range did not get enough sleep either. I found it interesting because this was my age range. I myself started thinking about my own experiences throughout my college life when I was struggling to sleep and how I wasn't getting enough sleep. Now, I was either forcing myself to not sleep or I just could not naturally fall asleep. What I mean by forcing myself to not sleep is whenever I would, let's say, have a project or an assignment or a test and quiz that I needed to study for, I would force myself to pull an all-nighter so that way I could finish whatever needed to be done or study for whatever material I needed to memorize for the upcoming quiz or test. This obviously is not healthy, but it is something that most college kids do. They want to make sure that whatever they're working on is as perfect as possible, or maybe they just waited until the last minute to complete something and now they're deciding to do it. But then there were situations where I just could not fall asleep naturally. The night would come and I would try to fall asleep on my bed with no intention to do anything, but then I would just find myself staring into nothing and then open my eyes realizing I was still awake. Maybe if I just stared at the wall for a couple of hours, I would then doze off, but instead I spent the whole night staring at the fucking wall and still not falling asleep. Why did this happen? For me, it was because I was probably still thinking about the things that were making me stressed out. I was anxious, I was scared, or for whatever reason, I just could not get these thoughts out of my head, even when I'm trying to do something as natural as fall asleep. You don't really try to force your body to just fall asleep. You just naturally do it because sleep is important, and that's just common sense for you to understand that your body needs this in order to continue living normally. Sleeping is what helps your body do its natural functions. It helps with your mental health. And it can also help you focus and improve your decision-making skills. And yet there are some people that struggle to do this natural everyday thing. Now, I'm not going to get into the science of how sleep works because that's annoying, but basically the way it works is not your brain just shutting off. If your brain was to completely shut off, how the fuck would you be able to breathe then? Whenever you're going to sleep, the way it works is your brain making your body enter a state of deep sleep. So when certain distractions come in the way of your brain trying to enter that deep sleep, it is impossible for it to want to fall asleep. Whether it be because of your anxiety or because of the stress that's building up through exterior sources, it's what's preventing the brain to let your body enter that state. Whether it's work or school, people are struggling to fall asleep because of the stress that comes with it. For example, if you're a college student and you're trying to prepare for a presentation, you're doing your best to make sure that it's as perfect as possible, but you're scared because you don't feel comfortable going up. And so now you're trying to go to sleep thinking about what are the things that can go wrong? How is it that I am going to make this work? Am I going to fuck this up? All these things that are running through your head is not helping when it comes to falling asleep. And unfortunately, whenever you don't get the right amount of sleep you need and you spend the whole night awake thinking about all these negative thoughts, you're going to end up very shitty the next morning. And if you are feeling shitty that day, the people around you are probably going to feel shitty as well if they spend time around you. What I mean by that is the normal way you present yourself in front of your friends or your family or the acquaintances you're going to meet the next day can then change over a simple lack of sleep, because no sleep will definitely affect your attitude and the mood that you have. Now, there are many ways for people to actually help themselves get natural sleep. It usually varies with the type of person, but nevertheless, there are plenty of ways for people to get the sleep they need. You could listen to music, take natural supplements, meditate. Some people even use marijuana and sleeping pills to help them go into a state of deep sleep. Now, I myself never really had to use that method to fall asleep. And it's not to say that I think those methods are horrible or they shouldn't be done. But for myself, I believed that I should not rely on a drug to help me get into a natural state of sleep, because I feared the addiction that I would get from it, as well as the side effects that may come with it. I believe that overusing the sleeping pills or the marijuana would cause me to just have even more anxiety and even more stress, because then I would just be thinking too much about making sure I have these drugs on hand. And so I will just end up focusing too much on making sure I have it. Also, from a financial standpoint, I would be spending way too much money on these things, especially if I'm more worried about ensuring that I get the sleep because of the drugs. But again, every person is different, and every person should not follow the same routine or the same options that one person uses in order to get their sleep. It's fine to rely on whatever helps you fall asleep. However, I will say that if these methods are harming you or making you feel worse than you did before, you might want to figure out a new option or try a different choice in entering a deep sleep. Now, of course, there are people who actually are suffering from an even extreme version of a sleeping disorder, meaning that these people go days on end without actually getting any sleep. These sleeping disorders could be insomnia or even sleep apnea. At that point, you will definitely need a medical evaluation from a doctor or a psychiatric who can then recommend you supplements or certain methods and really a better, much more efficient way to allow your body to enter a deep sleep. But sleep deprivation is common for people, especially when they reach a certain age or a certain point in their life where they have to take on more responsibilities and they are not prepared for it, and thus they get overly stressed out or super anxious, and then they just don't have any sleep because of it. They realize that sleep is important, but they're more worried about the new responsibilities that come their way, and they are now trying their best to complete these tasks or objectives that come from them. The way I was able to get natural sleep is through exercise. For me, it made sense to work my body down to exhaustion, so that way, whenever I needed to get some sleep, I would then just go to bed and absolutely pass out. Because I was so fucking tired after doing whatever exercise I was doing, my body had no choice but to then fall asleep. Because not only did I do the exercise, but I'm also moving around doing other things while I was attending college. So in the end, my body just completely shuts down, and then I have a nice long sleep, or at least the recommended amount of sleep needed. Whether it be doing a sport, lifting weights, or going for a run, exercise is a helpful way for your body to enter a state of sleep because of the amount of work you're doing. And so now your body is having to focus on making sure that you get the rest you need, so that way you can wake up the next morning with more energy and not feel like shit. But I can understand that it's time consuming, and I myself didn't have to work out every day in order to get the sleep I needed. I just followed a schedule and naturally fall asleep. So really, I would say if you want to do exercise to help you sleep, just commit to doing a simple schedule to where your body is going to adjust and naturally follow a flow to where it's then going to need sleep, so that way you can then have more energy for the following day. You're using so much energy that your body needs to regain that energy, and sleep is what helps your body do that. Sleeping is something that naturally comes to people without even having to think about it. But as I mentioned earlier, there will come a time, or maybe it won't happen to you right away, but sooner along the way, whenever you get overly stressed out over whatever new objective or new tasks that is placed upon you, and it affects the way that you're thinking about your daily routine, sooner or later, you might end up not being able to get a normal night's sleep. That's not to say that you will spend the whole night awake, but you might lose a few hours of sleep because you were too focused or too stressed out over the new responsibilities or new tasks that were presented to you. Sleep deprivation is a common thing, and it's happened to many people, but of course it can be avoided. And I feel like if you prepare for it, you won't have to worry too much about it. You'll be aware that this is something that's common, and you just need to figure out a way to control it and to prevent it from happening consistently. So please, do yourself a favor. Get some fucking sleep. Try your best to get the recommended amount of sleep. You need the energy for the next day. You don't want to feel like shit, and you don't want your day to be ruined because of the stress and anxiety that you get from whatever is coming your way. That's really all I wanted to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share the video. Thanks again for watching, and keep being awesome.